Hey guys, so a while ago, I think years ago, I used to have a segment on this channel called Stephen King Saturdays where I would review Stephen King movies every Saturday, in case you didn't get that by the title of the segment. Anyways, I've never actually done a roundup or like a top list of my favorite Stephen King films adapted from his books. So I thought that's what we would do today, talk about some Stephen King a little bit. I guarantee my list of Stephen King films that are my favorites are going to be different than your favorites. And please do not be offended if your favorite Stephen King film is not on this list or I missed a classic or something. I know, trust me. This is just my personal list. I did try to curate a list of Stephen King movies that are classics, like some of these are classics and some I think are a little bit more underrated. Also, I just want to thank Shudder again for sponsoring this video. I still use it all the time to this day. I found some really good gems on there, so I was so excited that they wanted to work with me again. In case you don't know what Shudder is or haven't seen my last couple of videos of me mentioning them, it is an online streaming service that streams all things horror, thriller, suspense, every single sub-genre of horror you can think of. A lot of you guys actually signed up using my code in my last couple of videos with them. It's a 30-day free trial code. Usually it's 7 days, but my code gets you 30 days. You can take advantage of it now, which I highly recommend doing it this month. This month, the month of May, is the perfect time to sign up for the 30-day free trial because this month they are going to be streaming 4 exclusive Stephen King films on their site, and it's only in the month of May. They're also going to have a lot of other exclusive content streaming this month, so I highly recommend signing up for the month of May. So the 4 Stephen King films that they're going to be streaming exclusively on Shudder this month are Cat's Eye, It, a classic, Salem's Lot, and then the first one on my list of top Stephen King films, Creepshow. I don't know if you guys have seen Creepshow. I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about it really. It is very old. But let me tell you, it is so good. It's basically an anthology type film. There's a bunch of stories within it, and they're all very disturbing and weird. Some of them were written exclusively for the film, so they're not actually based on Stephen King stories or anything, but it's good. Most of it's done with practical effects, if I'm remembering correctly, and that's just an extra bonus. So that will be streaming on Shudder this month, so definitely check that out if you have not seen it yet, because oh my gosh, it's very underrated in my opinion, and you know, to me it's a classic. I actually grew up watching it. I watched it as a teenager over and over and over again. So I have to mention it because it's a classic. There's also another one that will be streaming on Shudder this month, so definitely check it out if you haven't. I think a lot of people have watched it, but you know, you can always rewatch it. But the main reason why it's on this list is because of the remake. Love the remake. It's so good. I cannot wait for part 2. Obviously, I think you need to watch the original to watch the remake. I mean, you don't need to, it's just my opinion. I think you would enjoy it more if you've seen the original, but you know, you do you. But I couldn't really have a list of Stephen King films without it. Surprisingly, The Shining is not on this list. Please do not come for me and murder me in my sleep. Thank you. Next up we have Dolores Claiborne, which is not so much a horror film. It's kind of more subtle. He has a couple of these ones that are more dramatic and suspenseful and kind of thrillery and less straight horror that he's known for. It shows that he can do, you know, multiple types of genres and write in many ways. So although it is a less horrific storyline and movie, I still go in with caution because it is a very disturbing movie nonetheless. But it is a very good movie. Has Kathy Bates in it, obviously. I love her. The next one on my list is Gerald's Game. This is actually one that came out recently. I believe it came out in 2017 and I watched it and loved it. It's actually related to Dolores Claiborne. I would recommend watching Dolores Claiborne before Gerald's Game just so you get the references in Gerald's Game, but you don't necessarily need to have that, you know, knowledge already to get Gerald's Game or anything. They're not like directly related. There's a little crossover in there that I think is more entertaining and interesting if you know both stories. Again, Gerald's Game, not super horrific, although it does have more horror elements than Dolores Claiborne, so loved the horror elements within it. He really like gets the pure fear of the, like within this story. It is just so terrifying. So it is like very horrific, but it's still kind of more like Dolores Claiborne in the sense it's more dramatic. There's a lot more, you know, suspense and drama within it than horror elements, but it's still really, really good. Next on my list is actually, this is the first horror film I ever saw, and it was a Stephen King film, and I feel like that really influenced me in my life because he's my idol, like, of all time. So the movie is Pet Sematary. I think I watched this when I was like 10 or 11, or I don't even know. But I loved it then. I don't remember it scaring me that much, but you know, as a 10-year-old or however old. But it does have some good elements in it that are very horrifying. Obviously there's a famous ankle scene in the movie that makes us all cringe a little, I think. But it's kind of the concept of like an evil kid, but you know, I think this movie has a lot of like sadness in it that, you know, is, you know, in the mist too. I think Stephen King is not afraid to kill people in his stories. Men, women, children alike, he does not care. They all can die. No, Pet Sematary has to be on this list because it is the original Stephen King film that I saw that really got me into Stephen King as, you know, in general as a writer and his movies. Anyway, moving on. The next one is my favorite Stephen King film of all time, and that is Misery. Again, Kathy Bates. I feel like Kathy Bates just go hand in hand with Stephen King. But also Misery is just one of the most famous Stephen King adapted movies, and obviously a classic. I think everyone loves it who watches it, whereas other films of his I feel like are up for interpretation, or, you know, not everyone likes them. I think everyone loves Misery. And if you don't, I'd love to hear why not. The next movie is one that I think is a little underrated, and that is Thinner. This one really got to me. It's probably one of the most disturbing films, and it's not necessarily going to be disturbing for everyone. There was just something about it that bothered me so much. This guy gets cursed, and the curse makes him lose weight at a really rapid pace. That's why it's called Thinner. He just gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and it's just so disturbing because he just it's hard to look at sometimes. Next one is another underrated one, I feel, and that is 1408 with John Cusack. I love this movie. I've seen it so many times. Probably my most watched Stephen King film, to be honest. It is more modern, so it's based on his story, actually, which is a short story, not an actual novel. And I think it's because I was so excited about this because I read the original story years and years ago, and then the movie came out and I got to see, that's one of my favorite things about Stephen King films is after I've read the novel or the story or whatever, getting to see it come to life. And there's one movie, or it's not a movie, there's one book that has never been done, and I want it to be a reality so damn bad that I've thought about doing it myself. Like, I'm not even kidding. My favorite book by Stephen King, this is sidetracking by the way, my favorite book by Stephen King is The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and I just feel like that needs to be a movie, and no one has done it yet. And I just need it in my life because I've read that so many times. Like, that's my most read book, and I feel like no one really talks about it. I think it's also underrated and it needs to become a movie. Anyway, I'm digressing. But 1408, I read the story years before the movie came out, and so I was really excited to watch it, and it's pretty much what I had envisioned in my mind, so I think that's why I always go back to it and like to rewatch it. The Mist has to be on this list. Now, the movie, not the show. As you guys know, I did a rant video, I'll link it up here, was not a fan of the show, and from what I hear, it never gets better. So I never finished the show. It was just very disappointing to me. It didn't have the same horror elements that the movie did. I thought it would be more like that, but like a different storyline, which it is, but just be more similar to the movie, and it wasn't, so I was a little disappointed. But the movie, phenomenal. Seen that also many, many times. Never gets old. I love it. And lastly on this list is a little bit more of a supernatural film that I think not a lot of people talk about, but it was very popular at one point, I believe, and that is Dreamcatcher. It's been a long time since I've watched this, but I do remember it's an extremely good movie. I've actually never read the book, but I think I own it, actually. I have a bunch of Stephen King books that I've yet to read that are on the list. But yeah, it's just a really good movie and a little bit more supernatural and still horror, but it's not like Misery or, you know, those kind of vibes. Anyway, if you want to watch some of the movies on my list, make sure to use my code for a 30-day free trial on Shudder. I'll have the link to it down below. But yeah, that is my list. Let me know what you guys think of my list and my choices. Obviously, we're going to agree to disagree on some of them because I know some of them are you know, not as popular as others, and how could I make a list without The Shining? I just did. But anyway, please tell me your favorite Stephen King films down below, adapted from his book and his books. Let me know what your favorite Stephen King book is down below as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.